Well, hello. I'm Suzanne Nance. I am the program director and afternoon host at All Classical Portland, fairly new to the gang. And when I found out this would be my first pre-concert conversation, I asked what was on the program. And they said Turangalîla. I said, are you kidding me? Can I get Mozart's Piano Concerto No. 21 or something like that? I'm absolutely thrilled to be here, and I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so glad to be sitting next to this man, Carlos Kalmar. We worked together in Chicago. Carlos is, as you may know, the music director at the Grant Park Music Festival, and I did the radio broadcast series there, and I was blown away by the way Carlos programmed and brought things to the public there that would break down barriers and challenge the public and inspire. It was amazing. Not just, Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony, but really important works. So I got to know Maestro's ways before I came to Oregon, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be with you today, sir.
Thank you, Suzanne.
I have been watching previous interviews. I've been listening to what you've said about this piece. And I love that you said, first and foremost, let's see what happens.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see what happens.
I wonder what was in my mind when I said that. Because now, I said that at the time when we were talking about the piece, and not a single rehearsal, nothing has had happened. And I probably talked about it without really seeing that much of Rose Bond's work that is designed with the Turangalîla as an inspiration. Now I'm past all of this. I'm past every rehearsal. I'm the one unhappy guy together with all the others on stage who actually cannot see what you will see. Or let's say we cannot see that well because Rose uses pretty much anything you can see on stage aside from us, including all the proscenium and the sides to project her video artistry, and that is absolutely, just the idea of doing that is absolutely stunning. And I also, I can relate to this quote that you just said about let's see what happens, because my take is that, first of all, we have to be careful to at least mention Richard Wagner occasionally, because otherwise our half an hour is going to be taken with Messiaen's Turangalîla, rightly so. And in a way, this is a high-risk endeavor. I am a very firm believer that doing concerts, which is presenting live music, always is high risk. But you know what? There are things that are a little riskier than others. As an old teacher in Vienna, before I was a student there, said, give a good upbeat and leave the orchestra alone. That is actually works well with certain pieces, but not so much with others. And this is one of the others. This is a busy, really challenging, tough, majestic, overwhelming, loving, emotional ride for you and for us.
We want to get to Wagner too, and I'm glad you said that. Let's back up. Turangalîla, Sanskrit words. Turanga meaning time, Lila meaning play or love. And so we have this time, rhythm, movement, play, love song, and expression of over-the-top passion in 75, 76, 80 minutes, right? Depending. Tristan and Isolde play a part in Messiaen's score. It was part of a trilogy, Turangalîla. Perhaps we should start with the legend. Just a quick overview of Tristan and Isolde that inspired Wagner's music, and then Turangalîla. So, of course, Isolde is, well, she's on the ship. I just saw it basically again at the HD Met broadcast. And how many people are familiar with the legend? Yeah. So basically, Isolde is she's a princess, and she's pretty much captured, right, to be taken to marry King Mark. And she's tortured by this because she is falling for Tristan, and she makes a love potion and gets it to Tristan. He takes the love potion, and it works. But she thinks she's giving him a death potion, and what has happened is her servant has changed them. And so our friend servant has changed them for a love potion. And so she ends up having this unbelievable, passionate time with Tristan as she's making her way, depending on how the opera is set. And I'm talking about Wagner's version of it. And then it ends in utter tragedy. So what I love about Messiaen's inspiration for this piece is that there's this love, but it's tortured love. And I think you can hear that in the music. Maybe you disagree.
No. Yes, no, yeah. This music is so complex and brings us so many aspects. And of course, when we designed the program here, it was very intentional to actually put Prelude and Liebestod by Wagner in the first half, and Turangalîla in the second, because everything has to do with Tristan and Isolde. The interesting aspect of programming something like this together is that you have the same topic, the legend of Tristan and Isolde, as the core of each piece. In one case, it's an opera, it's very concrete, it follows the story, that's it. So and all the implication in the story. And the other is just, Tristan and Isolde is just an inspiration for something that Messiaen wants to express. So there is no story in Turangalîla. There is not like, oh, in movement 5, they are at this point. None of that. It's just music, inspired by Tristan and Isolde, amongst other things. So the big difference, aside from opera versus something like a symphony, is also probably to be found in how different a person like Richard Wagner and Germans in general treat the idea of love, and overwhelmingly passionate love, as opposed to the French. Because in Tristan and Isolde there is all the time guilt, all the time. And in Turangalîla it's not, not really. And of course Turangalîla, there are 3 movements called Turangalîla 1, 2, and 3, that essentially are quite abstract and get away maybe a little bit from this idea of love and passion. But I think it's very important for tonight's concert to understand the idea of love and passion in its most intense thing that hopefully, without the part of the dying, we all have in ourselves, in our lives. Because we're not talking per se, to be a little more specific, about the love that we feel for our children if we have them. It's more the love between man and woman. Let's say 2 equals, let's leave the gender outside. 2 equals, and it's the idea of passion that completely blows you away in a way that it becomes, in Wagner, painful, really painful, and in Messiaen, so overwhelming that it's already cosmic and transcendental. But in any case, this is a concert about love, just in very different ways. And Messiaen, well, where can we start?
We only have, 25 more minutes. Commissioned in 1945 by Serge Koussevitzky and the Koussevitzky Music Foundation, he was given absolutely no limits, no time duration,
I think that after this commission, I'm just making this up, but I didn't know you would mention it, but I think this is a great thing. All music directors, organizations never ever said again, write whatever you want.
Right, whatever you want, take as long as you want, and don't specify the instruments. So you might end up with 10 percussionists, an en martineau, a glockenspiel, all sorts of different forces on the stage, and 3 years later, that's what he delivered. I think what's interesting is he got about $1,000 for it then, which is $10,000 roughly now. And in the letter that Messiaen wrote back to the Kusevitsky Music Foundation, he was really concerned about that payment, which I thought was really interesting. He wanted to make sure he would have $10 a day when he came to America, and he said it 3 times in his letter. But I think what's interesting is Kusevitsky was going to conduct it. He fell ill, and at the premiere, Bernstein conducted it. So why do you think Bernstein only conducted it once?
Oh, it's actually, I think I know. He just hated the piece. It's, you know, the fascination even about Leonard Bernstein not liking this piece is fascinating, because we all know that Leonard Bernstein, as a conductor, was one of the biggest interpreters, most important, dedicated interpreters for the music of Gustav Mahler. Now, Gustav Mahler, as you probably know, is big symphonies, hell of a lot of emotionality, and long pieces. And Turangalîla is that, exactly. It's really long, it blows you away completely, it's highly emotional, just not like Mahler, very different language. And you think like, Lenny, what's your problem? But the bottom line is, still to this day, although it is vastly accepted that Turangalîla is one of the most important works of the 20th century, period, still it has to be accepted that people might not really like it. Because, and this is only a feeling that I have, not because it affects me, but because I think, oh, that may be your problem. It's sometimes so over the top that you're bursting. I mean, you know that in the second act of Tristan and Isolde, the opera, Isolde is waiting for her lover to come, and after 10 minutes or something, it's Wagner after all, takes a while.
20.
20. He comes. The build up to that scene until he comes into the room, you just, actually, I don't know who, but I know that at least one conductor died during this, like, well, but that's this Wagner, that's this angst. And in Messiaen, mainly, you will hear it, not only, but I would say the best example is the movement number 5. It's a very joyous movement, but it's relentless. It's like, it grabs you and never, you cannot breathe. You simply cannot, and maybe that's where, because Mahler, because I mentioned Mahler and Suzanne mentioned Leonard Bernstein, Mahler at least grabs you, explodes, and then he calms down. 5th movement, just don't wait for that. Doesn't happen.
You mentioned Mahler, and I know you have talked about in the 1980s conducting in Hamburg, and you found out that they were going to choreograph Mahler. And you said, are you kidding me? Leave him alone. Come on. And now I feel like your tune has changed in that you've said nothing is sacred, that it's okay to add our visual art to a work that you feel okay about that? Why?
Well, first of all, back in the later 80s, I was 29 or something. What do you know when you are 29? Nothing. At least not, as a conductor, you have no idea. And I'm not the only one who pretty much says about his past, like, yeah, never mind. And it's also because I can see the gain of linking two unrelated, somewhat unrelated, art forms together in order to make, I wouldn't dare to say an enjoyable, even a meaningful evening for the audience. It's all about meaning. And if that is just to choreograph a symphony by Gustav Mahler that was absolutely not Mahler's intention, or, I mean, look, I know that they have been, there is a piece by Joseph Haydn which is called The Seven Last Words of Christ, which is very, in itself, very introspective, very quiet, and very classical. And also that has been choreographed or staged, and that was not the intention of the composer. In that sense, Turangalîla, Messiaen's intention was not to be choreographed, video animation, artwork, any of that. None of that really was in the intention of the composer. However, the piece actually can gain a lot of things, and one of them is accessibility. And I think that is very, very important for all of you and us to understand together. This is a piece of music that I am sure probably you, or let me ask the question, has anybody here in the room heard Turangalîla live? Live. So you probably can attest this is a piece that it's not the easiest piece to kind of get it. And I think that just for starters, the thought that maybe the visual aspects adds something to the equation. And in our case, and I cannot be more clear than this is not illustrative art at all. This is just inspired by Rose Bond, a wonderful artist, did not do this in order for, oh, here there is love or whatever, let's illustrate it this way, or he isn't. No, it's more, what does the music tell me? And how do I go about it? And I can only tell you that you are going to be blown away. Just let me leave it at that. And I actually think that all I hope for this is, first of all, that you have a very meaningful time and you will talk about this concert. Second, I hope very much that you will realize that you want to see it again. So tomorrow and Monday are your second chances. And certainly I'm very, very hopeful that others will also get to see this in one way or the other, so that Rose's work actually doesn't stay here, because this should go and travel.
How many people here saw Bluebeard's Castle? Quite a few. So this, as you probably know, is the second in the Soundsight series. And I would love to give the Organ Symphony a huge round of applause for this kind of collaboration, this kind of creation and creativity in our community. It's pretty special, and you're a part of it now, and I think that's pretty special too. What I loved learning about Rose Bond is how she works. And as I was learning about her craft, she said, you may have seen Pixar, you may have seen Disney animations, but she choreographs time. So I think when we're watching tonight, the idea of choreographing time is so magical and so beautiful. And learning that Messiaen had synesthesia, I thought was also very interesting, that he sees colors when he hears music or when he's writing music. And I don't want to spoil anything, but I almost fell off my chair when I was watching the excerpts that were shown at the preview, the panel discussion that you all did, and saw that the opening is in black and white. That, to me, the idea that Messiaen is painting his music in color, and then you have this amazing animation in black and white that evolves, and there's a lot that I imagine happens that I haven't seen and can't wait to see. But I just thought that was extraordinary.
Well, I do not and cannot speak for Rose, because she's way more eloquent and can speak about her art in a way better form. But of course, when you are a visual artist and you are asked to actually build something for this particular work of music, and you work with video art and colors and so on, you have to be a really strong-minded artist in order to resist the temptation. Because the temptation when you hear this piece is, oh, I'm going to start with a firework, because that's how the piece starts very strongly, very like this. And Rose was very, very careful with what comes when. Because the same as in music, you have to have the breath to carry an entire evening, and you have to have the arch, so that at the end there is still something that captures the audience. Same goes for actually her as the visual artist, and I think she did a fantastic job. And I know there will be visual fireworks, but I know also where they are.
Let's talk about the Onde Martenot. This is such a fascinating instrument. Here it is on the side. And I learned a little bit from Cynthia Miller, who is absolutely delightful and travels all over the world performing this piece and others written for the instrument. But what's amazing to me is that it's like a theremin, but in this case, like, it's got a keyboard with a guide, little black buttons that are a guide. And every time, unlike the keyboard, every time she plays a note with her right hand, she's got to engage another button on the left to make it sound. So there's action on both ends. And then there's the ruban, the ring-like metal, how would you describe that? Thread.
It's a thread that she has on this finger.
The ring.
Right hand. That is attached to the side of the instrument on both sides. So that essentially that goes with her. You know, if you remember, if you ever heard a theremin as an instrument, and there was once a song by the Beach Boys that used that, you actually know that the theremin somehow sounds like what I call a singing saw. So, but stuff like that. Now, a theremin, essentially, if I get this right, actually you are only working, if you play the theremin, you are only working with air. There is nothing else there. There is no there is nothing. So essentially you use your right hand to do this and your left hand to do that. And that's all that there is. The Onde Martenot, which is also an electronic instrument, invented in 1928 by Maurice Martenot, is pretty much 50 times as complex. And this idea that it's kind of linked to the theremin is only because what is most audible immediately is actually that sound. But that's only one of the sounds that this produces. There are so many others. And I have good news. So, as you know, when you are coming regularly on Saturdays, I also talk from the stage at the top of the concert. And in this case, we are making a little bit of a demonstration. So I hope very much Cynthia is going to be with us and going to explain a little bit how this works. And in this case, Aunt Martenot is one of the instruments on stage. So essentially what you're seeing right now, the setup, this is the Wagner setup. Then we are going to clear a lot of this part of the stage because this is going to be crowded. There is a piano. Let's talk about the piano and the pianist in Turangalîla. God, that is a way to treat a pianist. Oh, so the piano is in the place of a soloist. It's dreadfully difficult to play. Needs probably an international soloist. If you go on YouTube or you buy a CD, you will see there are really name artists who play this part. However, the piano, although the pianist is very busy, never ever has a melody. Ever. No melody. It's just in a way, Bartók once said, piano is a percussion instrument. It's not as simple as that, but it's a lot of interesting work on the piano. Next to the piano, there will be a jeu de timbre, which is a glockenspiel that is played through a keyboard. After the jeu de timbre, there will be a celesta, which you know from other pieces. After the celesta, there is the vibraphone coming on, and finally there will be the bells, the big bells coming up. And then are all my dear friends of the percussion in the back with instruments that you actually already can see. All of that is crowded. And on top of that, we have a large orchestra. So that's all you need for Turangalîla.
That's it. Small forces. Why did you want to present this work?
Why? I mean, listen to it and then you know why. Because you can, I mean, it starts with just, you cannot, I think, you should not call yourself a major orchestra if you have never looked at this piece, ever. And we have made so incredible progress here at the Oregon Symphony in the last decade, so that this orchestra now can tackle anything. This piece is incredibly difficult to play. One of the problems of the piece is stamina. So we kind of thought about a massage therapist back there. Boy. And also, it has the same background in my mind, not the piece itself, but why I wanted to program it, as all the other music that has this little thing in our program book that says first performance by the Oregon Symphony. I actually think that we live in Portland, Oregon. We live in a very important city in the United States, aside from being a very beautiful city, and we live also in a city that prides itself for its artistic quality. We are artsy people. So let's expose ourselves to art. I know somebody way in the back said that. And let's just go for it. And I know that during my tenure as your music director for your orchestra, I presented a lot of pieces that you have never heard before, and this is one. And it's important, and I'm very grateful that you are here. You will not regret it.
How are we on time? We're out. OUT. There's so much more. Come back. We'll be doing this again tomorrow at 1 o'clock and then again at 6:30. And I do think you're going to want to see the piece again, and it's really the chance of a lifetime. So thank you, Carlos. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Suzanne.